You got something in your hair there.
Was it a bug or just a...
Probably some kind of fabric or a bead or something. You're in your studio.
Or flying through the air. Yeah. It's been windy and rainy and all of that kind of stuff. So
it could be.
Well, shalom, shalom. Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our study on the book of Acts. We are on Acts chapter 18. And really quickly, instead of our question of the day, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Israel. And we have really been praying for Israel right now. By the time this posts, there'll be, a week after the attack. But we have just been all last weekend praying with our group. I hope you're praying along with us. That God who protects Israel, of course, it says in the Bible, he never sleeps. And so we know that he's with his people. And we're sending lots of prayers and love their way. So I hope everyone's safe and protected, and that they can win this and turn it around the other direction.
We've read a lot in his word about battles that the Israelites went up against their enemies, and God gave them the victory.
You're exactly right.
But they need to seek God for that victory.
Yes.
That's the catch.
Maybe it's a wake-up call.
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so call out to God, even here, for just our smaller problems and troubles and all of that. So, okay, let's go ahead and open up our Bibles to Acts chapter 18. Verses 1 through 17. Let's get that started. Jay, would you like to read that?
Sure. After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all the Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker as they were, he stayed and worked with them. Every Sabbath he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy came from Macedonia, Paul devoted himself exclusively to preaching, testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Christ. But when the Jews opposed Paul and became abusive, he shook out his clothes in protest and said to them, "Your blood be on your own hands. I am clear of my responsibility from now on. I will go to the Gentiles." Then Paul left the synagogue and went next door to the house of Titus Justus, a worshiper of God. Crispus, the synagogue ruler, and his entire household believed in the Lord, and many of the Corinthians who had heard him believed and were baptized. One night, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. "Do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent, for I am with you. And no one is going to attack or harm you, because I have many people in this city." So Paul stayed for a year and a half, teaching them the word of God. While Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, the Jews made a united attack on Paul and brought him into court. "This man," they charged, "is persuading the people to worship God in ways contrary to the law." Just as Paul was about to speak, Gallio said to the Jews, "If you Jews were making a complaint about some misdemeanor or serious crime, it would be reasonable for me to listen to you. But since it involves questions about words and names in your own law, settle this matter yourselves. I will not be a judge of such things." So he had them ejected from the court. Then they all turned on Sosthenes, the synagogue ruler, and beat him in front of the court. But Gallio showed no concern whatsoever.
Oh my goodness.
Nice group of people.
Yeah. Oh man. It's just crazy that they're supposed to be the followers of God, the Jewish people. You know, they serve the one true living God. They should be kind of reflecting that a little bit, but they aren't. What were some of your favorite parts about this little passage?
I like the fact that Paul had Priscilla and Aquila to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's cool that they also were tent makers as he was, but the whole fact that not only did they have that in common, but they had Jesus in common,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it really great when you sit down with friends,
Yeah.
which I'm sure they were at that point, and just discuss Jesus.
Yeah.
And it was more just after Jesus in their day than we are now, you know?
Yeah.
So it's more fresh
Uh-huh.
and exciting.
Yeah, there's less of them.
I mean, new believers get excited too. You know, you have that passion. You're like, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, but back in the day, I'm sure that they were excited to be able to talk with Paul.
Yeah. Well, and they're, like I said, it was closer, like you were saying, to Jesus just being crucified and resurrected. So it's not like there's like a huge amount. You can't just go to a local church, you know, to find some people who are following Jesus, some believers, is really a neat thing.
Also, I think the benefit for Priscilla and Aquila was the fact that Paul was a Pharisee, ex-Pharisee.
Mm.
So he had the knowledge that maybe they didn't.
Help them through
So he could teach them more
through the Torah
about what the Jews believe. And so that would give them an in and a debate and to get them to reason and get it. That Jesus was the Christ. He did come for to die for their sins. To give them more ammo.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, do you think that's why they were more upset?
Probably.
Because he was kind of hitting them below the belt, kind of.
Well, especially
He
when
knew.
the Jews were upset, but Jesus was Jewish. So it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Jesus was a Gentile.
Yeah, but they were still upset.
Right. That's what it just floors me that they were upset. Jesus was a Jew. They're Jewish. They would be more apt to believe Paul if it was a Jew and not a Gentile.
Yeah.
But yet they still did not believe, and I think we've talked about this in past Bible studies, that they were upset because it threatened their welfare, their money, their livelihood, their living, right?
Or
The Pharisees and the Sadducees, everybody in the
their traditions. Their sometimes you could get
too.
set in your ways.
Yeah.
And then somebody comes in and stirs that up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Traditions. I didn't think about that.
I think even a lot of local churches, especially older type churches, they are set in their ways, and it may not necessarily be biblical ways, but traditional ways, you know, like what you wear, whether you take your hat on or off, you know, in service.
A lot of the laws.
Yeah, the unspoken laws sometimes, or the, you know, and he's threatening some of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, and if you think about it, he's saying that this man, Jesus, is God. It does threaten their idea of one, you know, their singular...
The true and living God.
Yeah,
like the
so
one and only God.
they're considering it to be kind of a threat.
Right.
Yeah, because they don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't... Go ahead.
Well, they were also, when I was researching and looking down here and looking at Sosthenes, or however you pronounce his name, was the Jewish synagogue leader. But it was also, like we said, Paul was teaching something that was not approved by the Roman law. It was outside.
Oh, yeah.
It's like if a Christian was Judean, it would be okay, but he's not teaching it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, and the Jews were like, and the other guys
And-
were like, he's teaching something completely,
Yeah.
you should be involved in this, and that, yeah.
Yeah, well, and he's, what was the guy who they went in front of? He was the judge,
Are you
basically.
talking?
Galileo.
Yeah. He basically
Galileo?
says,
Yeah.
this doesn't even concern us. Like, go fight amongst yourselves, you know.
Right, it's not a crime. He's not doing a
He
crime
didn't steal
here.
or do something that our law.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't against the law, anything. So
Yeah.
just go
Yeah,
figure it out on
he's kind of.
yourself.
I'm sure he's kind of thinking it was petty
Mhm.
to even bother him with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they got nuts and turned on Sosthenes
Yeah.
and started beating him in front of the court.
But I had to look him up too, and I looked him up, and they said that he was the synagogue leader, but he was also acting as like the scribe or the secretary
Okay.
for Paul and writing.
Ooh.
The things.
So he was involved.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, no wonder they were mad at him.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I wondered. Yeah, that's good information. So it's like, what was it, Jason that they beat because he had welcomed them into his home? You know, Jason welcomed Paul and all of them into his home a couple chapters back. And so they took him aside and then put him in prison. And here it's like basically now you can actually get put in prison or beat just by association.
Right.
You know? Oh my gosh. Well, I really love that in the midst of it, number one, you were talking about that he comes across Aquila and Priscilla, and they're doing their trade together, which that's a whole nother discussion too. But I love in the middle of it, before there's going to be some real trouble, Jesus pulls them aside in a vision and says, "Do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent, for I am with you. And no one is going to attack you or harm you, because I have many people in this city." And maybe he was feeling a little bit alone, or maybe he's like, okay, we got the synagogue leader, and we got Priscilla and Aquila and myself, and maybe a handful of others, and the crowds are a lot bigger.
Yeah.
So you kind of feel alone in the midst of it. And you know, Jesus is telling them, don't worry, I got a lot of people in this city, people that you don't even realize believe in me. There's like more power in this city than you believe.
Yeah, you're not alone,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
You got friends, man.
Yeah. Let me get a drink of your,
Yeah.
forgot my drink.
You get it? But yeah, he definitely was not alone.
Well, and there was obviously quite a few people that had been saved as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
he went, where did he go? Crispus, the synagogue leader, and his entire household believed.
Yes. Then,
Who heard Paul and believed and were baptized.
yeah.
Be nice to know what they considered a household.
So here he's called Crispus. Is this the same synagogue leader as this Sosthenes?
I don't think so.
So those are two different synagogue leaders.
Yeah.
So he's got two of them and their entire household.
You're talking,
So Crispus is also the synagogue leader, and his entire household believe in the Lord. And many of the Corinthians who heard about Paul believed and were baptized.
you got the house of Titus Justus, a worshiper of God.
I didn't think about that God is telling him, don't worry, you're not alone. After he's seen all of these people come. You know, you could be in a crowd of people and still feel alone.
Mhm.
You can have Satan kind of whispering, you're the only one. You're the only one that really believes this, so, you know, you're going to be defeated, you know?
Yeah.
even though you just saw it with your own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that in Corinth, Paul decides to just, in order to be able to stay there, he stays there like a year and a half or so. He ends up just doing his regular job. He goes back to
Tent making.
tent making. And not only does he meet fellow tent makers, but then he also can support himself, and it's a great way to do ministry. You're actually in and around people because you're selling things, and you kind of have an influence over your entire market.
Yeah.
Somebody also said in one of the videos that I watched that in the synagogue they sat in order of their profession. So in the synagogue, Paul would have sat next to Aquila and Priscilla, so that's probably where he met them. Did you guys find anything else in that section interesting?
No, I thought I wrote down a whole bunch more, but I guess I didn't.
Okay, let's go ahead and read 18 through the end. Do you want to do that?
I can.
You can?
Paul stayed on in Corinth for some time. Then he left the brothers and sisters and sailed for Syria, and accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. Before he sailed, he had his hair cut off at Caesarea because of a vow he had taken. They arrived at Ephesus, where Paul left Priscilla and Aquila. He himself went into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. When they asked him to spend more time with them, he declined, but as he left, he promised, "I will come back if it is God's will." Then he set sail from Ephesus. When he landed at Caesarea, he went up to Jerusalem and greeted the church, and then went down to Antioch. After spending some time in Antioch, Paul set out from there and traveled from place to place throughout the region of Galatia and Phrygia, strengthening all the disciples. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the Scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with great fervor, and taught about Jesus accurately, though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue. When Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they invited him into their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. When Apollos wanted to go to Achaia, the brothers and sisters encouraged him and wrote to the disciples there to welcome him. When he arrived, he was a great help to those who by grace had believed, for he was vigorously refuted his Jewish opponents in public debate, proving from the Scriptures that Jesus was the Messiah.
I love that story. So he's, Apollos is like a disciple of John the Baptist or something like that before Jesus's death and resurrection. So he's got all the exciting news. He runs and he's trying to tell everybody he knows about it, but he didn't hear about Jesus, right? Or something like that. So they're like, hey, I know you have zeal, I know you're excited, but you're missing a few key points. And here it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and then there was this other part where it said, where he cut his hair.
Yeah, do you know what that is?
Well, I had to look that up too.
Before he sailed, he had his hair cut off at Caesarea because of a vow he had taken.
Yeah, it was a Nazarite vow. And it talks about a Nazarite vow back in
Where are you going?
Numbers
Numbers.
6. Talks about the Nazarite. And boy, it kind of reminds me of when you see little boys in their clubhouse and they're making all these rules. That's what came to my mind.
It's
Because
like,
I'm like,
okay, we're gonna.
all these rules and all these little things that they have to do for stuff. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, no wonder. I'm so grateful
that we
that
don't
we
have
are
to do
under
that.
grace. Because there's like no way
Yeah,
could any one person,
yeah,
which is the whole purpose for Jesus Christ, but there is just like no way one person could do all this.
yeah,
Just even in this little Nazarite,
yeah. And
Vow.
I think they do it just for a time. I think.
it can either be a temporary one
Or
or
their
it can
whole
be
life.
their whole life. So,
Yeah.
and then it reminded me of like the, I completely lost who are the monasteries, the guys in the
Oh, the
monasteries,
monks.
the monks and things like
Yeah.
that, because they have all their rituals and all their things,
Yeah.
like some of them don't even talk, but
Yeah, I was just gonna say some of them take the vow
vow
of
of
silence,
silence.
and either for a time or whatever, but it's basically to clear all these things
Well,
out
even-
of their life.
And even the Jews, they had, 500 or 600 rules. It's impossible.
Yeah,
Nobody's going to be
extra
able to
rules.
keep every single one of those. It's overwhelming.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'd have a nervous breakdown.
yeah,
I mean, that's a lot of rules.
yeah. Well, let's name a few of them. I actually have it all listed here. Believe it or not, I had it scratched out from when we studied it way back when.
Mhm.
So number one, you can't eat any grapes. So no wine. You can't even eat grapes or raisins.
Right.
Number two, do not cut your hair. So obviously what he did is he cut his hair because he knew he was going to go into the vow. And he was like, I'm going to shave it so that then when I let it grow for whatever period of time, I don't have to have it all.
Yeah.
And then also you can't go anywhere near a dead body.
Yeah.
So like if a family member dies, well, sorry, you can't go to their funeral.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are still people to this day that actually do a Nazarite vow.
Yeah.
You can actually look it up online. And some people take it as, we did it once when we were searching this. We had come through to Numbers in our Bible study group. And so we started looking it up, and there were some people who did it for like a week. So they are like, I'm going to dedicate a week of my life to just praying, fasting, and just focusing.
Mhm.
But the more modern ones do it like, okay, we're giving up TV this week. We're not going to touch this or do this, and they replace some of those things.
Mhm.
Like the grapes would be, I'm not going to do anything that's pleasurable or joyful.
Right. And that's
That would be like
that- yeah,
entertainment.
that's the whole point. It takes away all of our human enjoyment, everything that we get enjoyment from. We're just dedicated to God.
And don't the
Yeah.
Catholics do Lent?
Yes.
Lent
that?
is very
Yes.
much like that.
That's
You
what I
give
thought.
something
They
up.
do a vow for a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I
And
thought.
nowadays you hear people like, oh, just everybody, I'm going off social media for 1 month
Yeah, they
or
just
1
take a
week.
break.
And that's probably good to kind of be able to, I don't know, just
Mhm.
I would love to be off social media for a week. So.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
Yeah. But
But I
that's,
mean, that's just a tidbit. There's a whole section
Yeah.
on it.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like,
you'll
oh my
find that
heavens.
I have it in number 6. You had it in 5
Yeah,
too.
no, 6.
6.
Just 6.
Okay, number 6 if you want to look that up and everything. But isn't that interesting that that's one tiny little half a sentence?
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually go and find out what does that mean? Because he moves kind of fast through here if you notice.
Mm-hmm.
He's like moving, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of information.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I think another great thing I like is the fact that you got Priscilla and Aquila hanging out with Paul. Now Apollos joins the group. So now he's got one more. And this guy had to have been very excited, to put it lightly.
I mean, if he had already started spreading the gospel before he even knew the whole gospel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like God let it just click, and he's like, oh, I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm so all in.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
they got to be a fun group to hang out with
Oh,
because
can
they're
you
all
imagine?
really passionate and excited about
Excited about
everything.
Jesus? Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and then he just kind of goes through like where all the places he went. We were just in Corinth, and that's where the church of Corinth was.
Corinthians.
The Corinthians. You can actually read letters to the Corinthians in First and Second Corinthians, and then they go to Ephesus, and you can actually read letters to Ephesus in Ephesians. So each of these churches that's kind of being planted and moving, we're kind of seeing what characters, like Aquila and Priscilla, they like Paul so much they just decide they're going to travel with him. I mean, they're tent makers, so you could probably travel wherever.
The one thing I found interesting is where he says he himself, regarding Paul, went into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. When they asked him to spend more time with them, he declined. I'm wondering why he didn't decline here, but he did decline here. Maybe he just felt like
I think he's over it.
he said what he needed to say. Yeah, I'm over you. No.
Isn't it one of
I'm over
them
you
that
guys.
he tried to reason with them and then they wouldn't accept it?
That was the one previously.
Okay, and then he said, well, fine,
This
then
is a
I'm
new
just
one.
going to go to the Gentiles. Maybe he's just still hanging on to that grudge. Like, I've been down this road and it's just not working out.
It could be that. It could be that he's over it.
Yeah.
That he's like, you know what? They're more apt to listen and to accept Christ as Lord of their lives. The Greeks,
Yeah.
the Gentiles,
Yeah.
instead of the Jews.
And it made them I think the Gentiles were more open because they didn't have all those traditions that were holding them down. That's why they say that it's harder for an adult to come to Christ than it is a child. Because I think we, at that point, have all that baggage that we brought with us and all the being cynical and, yeah, I've heard, people talk about Jesus before, and I think that's where the Jews are. They're in that, we have so much baggage and so much traditions that we can't peel away that and believe. And it says you have to become like a child. That's what the Bible says. Unless you become, I think those are Jesus's words. Unless you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of God. And that is because you have to let go of all that baggage, and you got to become a little more simple-minded.
Yeah. It's just cut and dry.
I love the story
it's none
of
of this huge debating.
What is the kid from Adam's Road? What's his name? Micah Wilder.
Micah Wilder, yep. As soon as you said it, like,
Micah Wilder. I love his story because he was a Mormon missionary who actually went on his mission to Florida, and he was very zealous. He was very excited about teaching everybody about the Mormon religion because he just was like, this is the best thing in the whole world. Well, he decides he's going to go to a Baptist church, and he wants to, him and his buddy want to convert the Baptist minister and the whole congregation.
that is very overzealous.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they went to a Sunday service.
Good
You
luck
can
with that.
see his testimony online. It's really funny. So he goes to the service and they listen to the whole service, and then they go to the pastor after and said, we have a proposition. We have to tell you about this gospel, the gospel. And the pastor's like, oh, of course they have their names. He knows that they're LDS. And so he says, oh, and then he goes, okay, I'll listen to you, come back tomorrow. So he has them in their meeting, and they give him the whole spiel and the gospel. And he listened to everything they had to say, and then he said, thank you guys so much for sharing that with me, but you have it wrong. And let me give you the gospel. And he gave them the gospel. Well, he got, Micah says he was mad. Oh, he was mad. He was furious. And then as they left, he says, the pastor says to him, just do me a favor. Go back and read the Bible, and especially the New Testament. Read it again, but read it as if you were a small child. Just read it with innocence and let all the baggage and all the traditions.
Not with the defense.
Yeah.
Because you'll never get it if you read it being defensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to read it with
the simple
your eyes
mind.
open and
just let it in its purity.
Yeah.
Without all the baggage.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So, anything else you guys found on this? I did love, back to the passage right before that, I did love in verse 10, again, going back to when Jesus tells him in a vision, do not be afraid, keep on speaking, do not be silent. My little notes just had a little thing here. It says, in a vision, Christ told Paul that he had many people in Corinth. Sometimes we can feel alone or isolated, especially when we see wickedness all around us and when we are persecuted for our faith. Usually, however, there are others in the neighborhood or community who also follow Christ. Ask God to lead you to them. And I had just written a note, this was years ago. Being a follower of Christ can feel lonely at times, but there are many real followers. Jesus tells Paul that he is not alone. And I think that's my big takeaway. Do you guys have a favorite part or a takeaway? I know yours is the Nazarite vow because you're going to do that this week. No grapes. You can't cut your hair. That's easy for us.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, for a week I won't cut my hair.
No, it just makes you really appreciate Jesus more when you see what these people do.
Yeah.
And, to have salvation and to be close to God, but I'm just thankful.
Yeah.
The more and more that I dig into it and find out this stuff, I'm just more thankful every day.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And thankful we live in this generation.
Yeah.
This far after Jesus' resurrection.
Yes.
What's your favorite part, Jay?
I think I like the fact that Jesus goes to Paul in the vision and speaks to him. And I'm willing to bet that wasn't the first time that Jesus went and spoke to Paul, and that he knew Jesus' voice.
Mm-hmm.
He knew it.
Well, remember,
so
it
when
was
he
the
spoke to him,
road to Damascus.
Yeah, exactly.
He heard
exactly.
his
That was
voice.
the first time. Paul, why do you persecute me?
He's like, oh, I know
Yeah.
that voice. But this time it's comforting.
Or Saul, why do you persecute me? Now he's Paul.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that he's reassuring him. Not only is he telling him, it's okay, I have many people here, but he spoke to him himself. Then on top of letting him know that he has all these people there, then Paul knows that Jesus is with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jesus is the one speaking it.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway. I like the fact that Jesus actually went to him, spoke to him, told him not to be afraid, don't be silent, be courageous.
Mm-hmm.
Just like David always said in the Psalms, be bold, be strong, for the Lord your God is with you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid. And when it's in red letters and Jesus is the one who's saying it, I think that's just so cool because he let Paul know, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. That's my takeaway. He's got us.
Yeah.
He's got us. Sometimes we might be afraid. Sometimes we might be stressed out, but he's got us.
Mm-hmm.
He's got you.
He's got you.
He's got you. He's got us. He had Paul.
And we're not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not alone.
We're not alone. Nope.
Yeah.
He's always got us. When we've got him in here, he's got us.
I think my prayer then is that the people in the army, the Israeli army, the civilians that were captured,
Yeah.
all of them, that they can hear Jesus' voice right now that says, you're not alone,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And maybe the ones that are going to attack and take things back over, be strong, be courageous. I just hope that they can hear Jesus' voice and that they realize that it's Jesus, their Messiah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hands down.
Yeah, and our Messiah.
Yeah. And that God opens their eyes to that,
Yeah,
that they can see him
yeah.
and hear him.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, that was a fun study, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
it was
this
short
chapter-
and sweet, and
But this chapter was good.
he moved over a lot of land. I mean, we basically just was like, let's just zoom right through the rest of his. But our next week is going to be Acts chapter 19, and we're going to actually start the third missionary journey, which is cool.
Ephesus.
Yes. So thank you all for joining us. We love you guys. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. Keep praying for Israel, and we're also praying for you. So tell us in the comments if you've ever felt alone and if you've heard God's voice comforting you. Love you all, and have a great week. Bye. Shalom, dear friends.
See you guys.